A little girl came home from school and said to her mother, "Mommy, today in school I was punished for something that I didn't do." The mother exclaimed, "But that's terrible. I'm going to have a talk with your teacher about this. By the way, what was it that you didn't do?" The little girl replied, "My homework." The students were lined up in the cafeteria for lunch. At the head of the table was a large pile of apples. The nun made a note and posted on the apple tray, "Take only one. God is watching." Moving further along the lunch line at the other end of the table was a large pile of chocolate chip cookies. A child had written a note, "Take all you want. God is watching the apples." Teacher: "Why are you late, Joseph?" Joseph: "Because of a sign down the road." Teacher: "What does a sign have to do with you being late?" Joseph: "The sign said, 'School ahead, go slow.'" Teacher: "Here is a math problem. If your dad earned $300 a week and he gave your mother half, what should he have?" Student: "A heart attack." A blonde gets a job as a physical education teacher of 16-year-olds. She notices a boy at the end of the field standing alone while all the other kids are running around having fun kicking a ball. She takes pity on him and decides to speak to him. "You okay?" she says. "Yes." He says, "You can go and play with the other kids, you know." She says, "No, it's probably best I stay here." He says, "Why's that, sweetie?" says the blonde. The boy looks at her incredulously and says, "Because I'm the goalie." It was the first day of class, and the professor announced, "If there are any morons in this class, I'd like them to stand up." After a long pause, a lone freshman stood up. "Young man," the professor asked, "do you consider yourself a moron?" "Well, not really, sir," the student answered, "but I hated to see you standing up there all alone." Two Tennessee rednecks, Bubba and Jim Bob, are sitting at their favorite bar, drinking beer. Bubba turns to Jim Bob and says, "You know, I'm tired of going through life without an education. Tomorrow I think I'll go to the community college and sign up for some classes." Jim Bob thinks it's a good idea, and the two leave. The next day, Bubba goes down to the college and meets the dean of admissions, who signs him up for the 4 basic classes: math, English, history, and logic. "Logic?" Bubba says. "What's that?" The dean says, "I'll show you. Do you own a weed eater?" "Yeah." "Then logically speaking, because you own a weed eater, I think that you would have a yard." "That's true, I do have a yard." "I'm not done," the dean says. "Because you have a yard, I think logically that you would have a house." "Yes, I do have a house." "And because you have a house, I think that you might, logically, have a family." "I have a family." "I'm not done yet. Because you have a family, then logically you must have a wife." "Yes, I do have a wife." "And because you have a wife, then logic tells me you must be a heterosexual." "I am a heterosexual." "That's amazing. You were able to find out all of that because I have a weed eater." Excited to take the class now, Bubba shakes the dean's hand and leaves to go meet Jim Bob at the bar. He tells Jim Bob about his classes, how he is signed up for math, English, history, and logic. "Logic," Jim Bob says. "What's that?" Bubba says, "I'll show you. Do you have a weed eater?" "No." "Then you're homosexual." An engineering professor and his students are offered a free airplane ticket for an educational trip. Once they get on the plane, the captain announces that the plane has in fact been built by the engineering students and that this is the first test ride. Everyone rushes off the plane while the professor remains calm in his seat. A flight attendant then approaches the professor and asks him why he didn't leave the plane as well, to which he replies, smiling, "I know my students well enough to know that this shit won't even start." A college student wanted to sit next to one of his teachers at lunch. However, the teacher looked at the student with an arrogant face and said, "A swan shan't be friends with a pig." "Then I shall fly on," answered the student with a smile. The teacher was clearly vexed by the cheeky reply and decided to make sure to do everything in his power to fail the student. At the oral exam, he gave the student the hardest questions, but the student had amazing answers for everything. Therefore, hoping he could still fail his victim, the teacher asked him a trickier question. "You're walking on a road and you find two bags. One contains gold, the other cleverness. Which bag do you choose?" "The gold." "Unfortunately, I don't agree. I'd choose cleverness because that's more important than money." "Everyone would choose what they don't have," says the student. The teacher turns red, and he's so angry he writes "ass" on the student's paper. The student leaves without looking at the paper. However, he returns shortly, gives back his paper and says, "Excuse me, sir, you signed my paper, but you forgot to give me my grade." Elon Musk, Tiger Woods, the Pope, and a college student are on an airplane. The plane is going down, the pilot's bailed, it's going to crash. There's 4 of them and only 3 parachutes. Tiger Woods says, "I'm the best golfer in the world. I think I should get a parachute." Everyone agrees. Tiger Woods takes a parachute and jumps out of the plane. Elon Musk says, "I'm the smartest man in the world. I think I should get a parachute." Everyone agrees. Elon Musk jumps out of the plane. The Pope tells the college student, "My son, take this last parachute and live a long, happy life." The college student says, "We can both go. The smartest man just jumped out with my backpack." On the first day of college, the dean addressed the students, pointing out some of the rules. He says, the female dormitory would be prohibited for all male students, and the male dormitory would be prohibited for the female students. Continuing further, he says, anyone caught breaking this rule would be fined $50 the first time. Anyone caught breaking this rule the second time would be fined $100. Being caught the third time would incur a hefty fine of $200. Are there any questions? At this, a male student in the crowd inquired, "How much for a season pass?" A college professor started to notice that one of his students, Dave, started gaining lots of female attention. So, one day he asks Dave about his secret. Dave replies, "Well, before sex, I simply whip out my willy and smack it against the bedside table like a hammer. It numbs it up and makes me last longer." Later that day, the professor gets home to his wife and finds her in the shower, a welcome opportunity for sex. So he quickly undresses and starts banging his dick against the dresser just before hearing his wife calling from the shower, "Dave, is that you?" Dr. Parker, the biology instructor at a posh suburban girls' junior college, said during class, "Miss Smith, would you please name the organ of the human body, which under the appropriate conditions expands to 6 times its normal size, and define the conditions?" Miss Smith gasped, blushed deeply, then said freezingly, "Dr. Parker, I do not think that is a proper question to ask me. You should be asking a boy, and I assure you my parents will hear of this." With that, she sat down, very red-faced. Unperturbed, Dr. Parker called on Miss Johnson and asked the same question. Miss Johnson, with composure, replied, "The pupil of the eye, in dim light." "Correct," said Dr. Parker. "And now, Miss Smith, I have 3 things to say to you. 1. You have not studied your lesson. 2. You have a dirty mind. And 3. You will someday be faced with a dreadful disappointment. A college professor is driving home drunk one Saturday night. When he gets pulled over, the cop comes up to his window and asks him, "Excuse me, sir, you were speeding, you ran a red light, and you appear to be drunk. Where are you going?" The professor replies, "I am currently on my way to a lecture concerning the dangers of drinking, smoking, and staying up late." The police officer says, "Who could possibly be giving that kind of lecture at this time?" The professor responds, "My wife."